What's the most satisfying act of I don't give a fuck that you have ever witnessed? I was in line at a coffee shop and the lady was complaining that they didn't have organic milk, and without a word or hesitation the guy behind the counter just said next please, not even taking her order. Back when I worked at a movie theater, one of my fellow assistant managers, Jack, had the constant attitude of not giving a fuck. He'd worked at the theater longer than anyone and was good friends with the general manager, so he got away with murder. One time this lady wanted a refund for a movie she'd finished watching. She was going crazy, screaming at us about how the movie was so inappropriate to be rated PG-13, and she couldn't stand all the swearing in the movie. I kept calmly trying to explain to her that, since the movie was already over, we couldn't give her a refund. Our policy clearly stated no refunds after 30 minutes into showtime. She's not hearing it and looks to Jack now, like he will give her the answer she wants. He starts saying the same thing I did, and she interrupts him again with her yelling about how she couldn't stand all the swearing in the film. Jack rolls his eyes and just says, well, that's just too fucking bad, and walks off. Cue stunned look on my face and the ladies. My cashier in Amsterdam was literally just taking my groceries and sliding them across but not scanning them, and then putting them into my bag. She scanned the last thing for like €2 and goes, that'll be €2. She did not give even half of one fuck. Didn't see it, but it was talked about at my old restaurant. My autistic friend was getting an interview for a second restaurant job. The chef doing the interview asked this question and got this response: I could be the biggest asshole when things get heated. How do you feel about that? Well, if that's the case, then I don't want to work for you. When I worked at a cafe, a woman requested gluten-free bread. I said, we don't have gluten-free bread. What if I want gluten-free bread? My coworker, I'll go somewhere else, I guess. I forget if she stayed, she was with someone else, or left. We had things that were gluten-free like omelets and salads, but no bread. Some Karen was beefing about a 25 cents off coupon. The coupon was for a 42 ounce bottle of something, but she wanted a 28 ounce bottle. The coupon was rejected when scanned, because there was no product to match it. There was nothing the cashier could do, but Karen just kept demanding 25 cents off. Finally, the guy ahead of me in line marched up to the counter, slapped a quarter down, and said, there's your fucking 25 cents off. Now pay your fucking bill, so the rest of us can go on with our days. Was living and working from home on a super busy street. One day I hear a ruckus out front. There's an sub stopped in the middle of the road, the occupants apparently having a fight. No traffic could get by, and wouldn't you know it, like 10 cars back there's a deputy's car. Deputy walks up, already pissed off by the shape of his stride. Now I couldn't hear anything up to this point, but things got very loud. He demanded to know what the issue was. Driver wanted the passenger out of the car. Deputy asks the passenger, whose car? Passenger begrudgingly says it's the driver's, but that they help pay for it. Deputy, out of the car. Passenger, but, deputy, now, out. Passenger gets out. Goes to stand on the curb as directed. Deputy, to the driver, drive. Passenger, but how am I supposed to get home? Deputy, walk. Deputy turns and walks off into sunset. Seriously, that last walk was the coldest damn command I'd ever heard. The deputy was 100,000% done with everyone's shit that day. In college we had this prof for physics who liked to pick on a few students, basically me and a few others. We had an exam, and he would take off major points over trivial items. Cases where people were getting the correct answers, but he didn't agree with our work, shit like that. And we're talking getting 2 over 20 on a question, which pretty much fucks you over. After insulting us, the prof gets up and solves a problem on the board and made a trivial mistake, the kind of one that nearly caused us all to fail his class. One of the guys gets up, writes F on the board, flicks him off and walks off. Truly the hero we need. Had an inland flight about 3 years ago. This kid in the row behind me, prob 6 to 8 years old, started to kick my seat after IDGAF. It was not a long flight, about 1.5 hour, but I hate this kinda shit. So I turned around and sure enough, that prick was kicking my seat, while his mom and dad was sitting on either side of him, pretending to not notice. First I kindly asked the dad if he could make him stop, and he somewhat tried to convince his kid to stop. The kid sulked, but seemed to get the memo, at least for 1 minute, and then proceeded to kick my seat again. And once again I turned around, and this time, dropped the police entries, and told them that this was a golden opportunity to teach their kids some manners. As this is Norway, and some people are starting to feel more entitled at others, this didn't go that well, and mom started to yell at me, and that he is just a kid, and needs to express himself. It is at this moment the flight attendant arrives, and I try to explain the situation, while this kid's shitty mom and dad tries to bagatelize my complaint by saying I'm the one who is making a scene. The flight attendant, not wanting any trouble as we are miles above ground, tries to explain that kicking the seat can be annoying and that we all should just get along. Flight attendant leaves and kicking commences, so I simply picked up my stuff, walked to the row behind them, asked the woman behind them if she would be so nice to could move to the window seat so I could get the middle seat. She just smiled and nodded. I sat down behind the kid and started kicking for the 40-50 minutes that was left of the flight. Edit. Apparently I have to address this. Since it's an airplane, the seats lock together, thus the parents felt my kicks just as good as the kid in the middle. I didn't kick so hard that anyone would go flying, just enough to be F***ing annoying. At Costco this older gentleman was screaming at my boss because apparently all the handicap parking spots were occupied. My boss asked for his informations so he could write a complaint. We had little forms for that. Nothing really official, mostly to shut up people. Are you a member? No. Well, that it's then. My boss then put the little form in the garbage can and walked away. The old man was stunned. My location for work has 1k people being laid off in 5 weeks. We've basically started doing the bare minimum. We've been playing Cards Against Humanity and streaming TV shows. We do about 2 hours of work, then spend the next 7 fucking around. Speaking of, I got to go. I'm hosting the next game. It was me doing it. I worked at a 24-hour restaurant. My shifts mostly were Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 6 PM to 4 AM. The manager of the restaurant really believed I wanted his job, so he would write me up for the most ridiculous things. One time he wrote me up for a bad review from a customer on a night that I wasn't even working. That one got him in trouble with the regional manager. Moving forward, it was a stupidly busy Saturday night, about 5:45 PM. I got into work, and he met me with yet another write-up, this time for allowing the kitchen to run out of a particular item during my last shift. I didn't even do the orders, but apparently it was my fault. So, I went back to my car, took off my uniform, put on normal clothes I had in there, walked up to the kitchen counter where he was busy with the kitchen staff and some waitresses and waiters. He looked at me, told me what area I would be working that night. I looked him dead in the eye and said I don't think so. He said it again, and again I said I don't think so, this time handing him all of my uniforms. As I turned to walk out of the restaurant, he called out after me, "You can't do this. You are rostered on." I turned, pulled my height, and said, "Oh honey, I can," and I just did. As I have been rostered for only 37 hours in total each week for the past 6 weeks, it is deemed I'm part-time. As a part-time employee, I'm only required to submit my resignation. I'm not required to give you any notice. He called me about an hour later and begged me to go back. Yeah, fuck you mate, that's not happening. Worked a shitty fast food job when I was 15. Girl I worked with got fired. The manager was a real witch, says to her as she's escorting her out of the building that she needs to return her work shirt cleaned. Girl whipped it right off and threw it at her, walked out to her car in her black bra and drove off. Damn, I wish I'd got her number. Imagine this, summer camp for special need kids. A counselor leading a child away by the arm. Counselor, I'm very disappointed in you Ellie. Ellie, shut the fuck up and lose weight Susan. When I delivered pizza we had this older driver, prob in his 20s, who came back from a delivery and was pretty annoyed. A few minutes later the store got a phone call complaining about him. Essentially what happened was, a regular pie delivered was $11.97 and the person handed him $12 and asked for their change. He said okay, went back to his car and got 3 pennies and looked the woman in the eyes and rolled the pennies between her legs into her house and walked back to his car. In high school, I was a senior and he was a sophomore and we had gym together. He would make nasty sexual comments about me constantly. Just gross. I reported it to the gym teacher who laughed it off. The last straw was as we were getting off the bus after a field trip and he grabbed my ass. I got off the bus, handed my stuff to a friend, and the minute his feet touched the ground, I went at him. All 110 pounds of me just wailing on him. He couldn't get a punch in, even though my friend said he tried. Lol. I blacked his eye, bloodied his nose, pulled out a chunk of hair, and scratched him up pretty bad. I quit when he dropped into the fetal position, then I just walked home. It was fucking great. Monday I got called into the office because this went down on school property. I got the gym teacher in trouble for inaction and was suspended from the bus for a month. Dude got a 3-day suspension for ass grabbing. When he came back, his face was still pretty colorful and he got teased relentlessly for getting his ass kicked by a girl half his size. He grew up to be a meth head, in and out of jail, eater. This was in 91, so the no tolerance policies weren't in effect yet. Work in Geek Squad. Another agent was really upset that day and had a rough patch of a few clients who were really mean and extremely rude to him. After bearing through them, and after about a 10-minute break, he helped another client. Their first words were, "Alright, Best Buy gave me a shit product that broke after 6 months and I want you to fix it right now," which he explained that there's a process and he couldn't fix it right now, and the guy cut him off and said, "I don't care, get it done." Well, he sat there for a second quiet and took off his badge, slapped it on the table, yelled "fuck you," then started walking towards the front door with middle fingers up pointing at everyone, then said, "and fuck this place," and walked out. When I went home and on Steam I saw he bought GTA 5. He then had 200 hours played in 2 weeks after that. Haven't checked since. Little bit late, but at Air Force basic training, when you first show up you're either in civilian clothes or the uniform with sneakers, because they don't want to fuck up your feet I guess, and are affectionately called sneaker weakers. While at chow, if the table behind you gets up, you need to get up and leave regardless if you're finished. If 2 tables behind you get up you'll be swarmed by MTIs and have them scream in your face until you do get up. I had just put my tray back and started to walk out when I looked back and see one lone sneaker weaker by himself in a row of 5 or 6 tables, surrounded by 6 MTIs. Kid is staring straight ahead and just eating his food one spoonful at a time, while the MTIs scream in his face. Finishes his food, sets his spoon down, picks up his drink and just slowly finishes his water, turns his glass over, puts it down, picks up his tray and walks up to put it away, while still being screamed at by 6 MTIs. Kid is walking out, and I realize everyone in the room is staring at him. He has no emotion, no fear, no smirk, nothing as he walks out of the chow hall. Asshole yelling at the waitress because he didn't get any free bread rolls. The place doesn't serve that. One of the chefs went to him with a baguette and tried to forcefully feed the guy. I've learned that the asshole always tried to get free food. The old management gave it to him to keep his mouth shut, but apparently the other employees had enough. I was playing paintball in Oklahoma at a D-Day event. A lot of the guys there are vets or currently in. There was a guy that was pissed because he got shot and he confronted the guy that shot him and pulled a knife. Little did he know the guy was SF, Special Forces, and he just goes like, "What are you gonna do with that?" The pissed guy tries to stab him, and the SF guy proceeded to break his wrist and take his knife like nothing ever happened. Refs watched it happen too. Nobody said anything. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Goodbye.